Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Secretary of State. We know that the withdrawal agreement was rejected 3 times, and that gave rise then to the cross-party talks. The cross-party talks, very serious talks, went on for a period of around 6 weeks, and from them a number of commitments and, if you like, concessions were announced by the Prime Minister, reflecting what Labour had been asking for particularly, which was more clarity about issues around the future relationship, so around the customs union, on dynamic alignment on environmental and consumer rights, etc., etc. As you know, that was branded as the withdrawal agreement bill, but that package, that new package, was never published. Do you think that withdrawal agreement bill should now be published by the government, as it would be a helpful stepping stone, if you like, for finding the basis for a deal?
I think the more informed the debate is, the better. I think that having sat in on some of those talks, I know that there was a sincere attempt by many in them to find common ground. I think that some of the people who were involved in those talks are no longer in government, so I think out of politeness, before making plain everything that may or may not have been discussed, I would have to make sure that the conversations had with those who were involved in those talks who are no longer in government, because I wouldn't want them to feel that there was any discourtesy to them. I should stress, as you know, that this was an attempt to find compromise. And following on from the point that I made to Stephen, there were some aspects of what we were proposing in those talks that made me deeply uncomfortable, but I felt that it was important to try to see if we could find a way through. People will form their own judgment about the good faith of the individuals involved, and about the merits of the package that came up. And I wouldn't want to try to influence people on that, but I do think if we can help this committee and Parliament know as much information as possible so they can come to an appropriate judgment, then that's something I'd like to do.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful, and perhaps we may be able to follow up on that, Chair, but that's something we can discuss. I wanted to then just move on to how the negotiations would work with the European Union in the event of a no deal. The legal basis would, of course, shift from Article 50 to Article 218. On the 31st of August, Michel Barnier wrote that in the case of a no deal, all the UK's financial and other obligations from its past EU membership will continue to exist, as well as obviously the international obligations it has to protect the Good Friday Agreement in all its dimensions. So the message from the European Union is clear that even in the event of a no deal, the divorce items, if you like, under the withdrawal agreement and Article 50 are still in play, and no discussions, no mini deals, no FTA talk, no future relationship talk can possibly take place until those items are agreed. Do you agree with that analysis?
I absolutely agree that is the position that Michel Barnier has taken, and he's faithfully reflecting the mandate that the Council has given him. And I'll just say a little bit extra for clarity, and please cut me off if I'm going into too much unnecessary detail. The EU's been clear that they regard 3 things as central before we can move on to a future economic partnership. Citizens. I believe that everything that we've done in domestic legislation will mean that the EU citizens in the UK have all their rights, and those are guaranteed, but you can probe that in a second if you want. Then the second thing is financial obligations. The financial obligations that were agreed as part of the withdrawal agreement are dependent on a withdrawal agreement existing. In the absence of a withdrawal agreement, I think people agree that there would be obligations that the UK has to the EU, but the precise nature of them, the size of them, I think is open to debate. And then the third area is maintaining the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. I think that the backstop that exists in the current withdrawal agreement was a sincere attempt to resolve some of those issues, but there are other ways in which those issues can be fairly resolved as well. But the broad analysis that you have, I think, is a fair one. But of course, the EU Commission's the negotiating mandate the Council gives the Commission can always change. And you're also right, of course, that the Article 218 process it requires a degree of acceptance by individual member state parliaments of anything that's agreed, which the Article 50 process doesn't.
Thank you. Just one final question. Focusing specifically on the Northern Ireland piece in all of that, the European Union's clear that they everything has to be done to protect the Belfast and Good Friday Agreement. If we leave without a deal, that would be done under an Article 218 process, but by definition would take much longer, because that would surely fall under the category of a mixed agreement and would therefore require ratification by 28 member state parliaments. So in the meantime, what measures could be possibly put in place to discuss alternative arrangements? Because you wouldn't be doing that in a transition period under Article 50.
No, quite.
You would be doing that in a third country. We would be a third country at that point. So how would we manage that process?
You're absolutely right. It is the case that in the event of a no-deal exit, there are particular challenges which are more acute in Northern Ireland than elsewhere. And again, I don't want to apportion blame in any way, but we have said that in order to ensure that the spirit and the letter of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement are abided by, that we will, for example, maintain a common travel area, that the only checks that we would impose would not be at the border, but would be those absolutely mandated by international law. At the moment, we don't know. This is not a criticism, just an observation. The precise requirements that the Commission would have of Ireland as a member state, we would like to have more conversations both with the Commission and with the Republic of Ireland about what one might do in the event of no deal before we then moved to whatever a new agreement might be. But it is, unless I'm misunderstanding your question, it is the case that there are additional challenges posed, absolutely.
Thank you.